When you do set boundaries, it actually helps people respect you more because if you don't have any boundaries, that's when people feel that they can just walk all over you, and that's no good.
I am Gloria Grace Rand, founder of the Love Method and author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Live, Love, Engage: How to Stop Doubting Yourself and Start Being Yourself. In this podcast, we share practical advice from a spiritual perspective on how to live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically, so you can create a life and business with more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Live, Love, Engage.
Namaste. Are you constantly feeling drained? Maybe you're juggling endless tasks and wondering where your day went? Well, today we are diving into a powerful tool that every heart centered, spiritually minded entrepreneur needs: boundaries. But before we get there, I want to welcome those of you who are new to Live, Love, Engage. I am Gloria Grace, and I help female entrepreneurs attract those ideal clients who align with your values and wind up becoming your biggest cheerleaders. So, boundaries. Let's get into it. Let's get into this topic. Boy, oh boy, this is something that I had to learn how to establish in my own business. But what is it? Well, if you think about what is a boundary in real life, it's some sort of mechanism, often like a fence or something that actually protects you. And in this case, it protects your time and your energy so that you can be a more effective entrepreneur. So, for instance, if you find yourself saying yes when you really want to say no, that is an indication that you need a boundary. You've got to set one up. And let me give you some more examples of what it could look like as well. So, let's say you've got a client that is always showing up late to your calls and then expects the session to go over time, but you haven't communicated that this is a problem. Or you've got a client who always cancels at the last minute, despite knowing your cancellation policy, and again, expects you to make an exception each and every time. Or maybe you run a group program, a coaching program, or a mastermind, and you've got some person, the same person every time you meet, who is monopolizing that group discussion, not letting others, get a chance to have their say. I learned how to do this in facilitator training, that, you don't want to do that. You want to be able to make space for everyone to be able to communicate. So, as I said, I've learned the hard way about the need for boundaries because even after I had started my business, I continued for, when you first start a business, of course, you're going to work long hours. You're probably going to work weekends, but eventually you get to a point where things should be running well enough that you don't have to do that anymore. But I was still doing that. And I actually have I received a glowing testimonial from a client who was so happy that I was always available to her whenever she texted or phoned. And when I listened to that, it's actually on my YouTube channel. You can probably find it there. When I listen to that now, I kind of cringe because I loved her and I loved helping her out. But at the same time, I needed to set up some boundaries with her so that I wasn't quite available all the time, unless it was an absolute emergency. Of course, if someone has an emergency, you want to respond. But if it was, maybe a question about her website, where I think I was helping her with at the time, that could probably wait until the next business day. I didn't need to necessarily respond right then and there for her, just because she had a question. So boundaries are super, super important for us to have. And it's well, I was going to share some more examples, but I think I'll do that later. Let's go over the benefits. I mean, again, what are the benefits truly of having boundaries? And I would say one of them is it actually helps you to develop healthier relationships with your clients, your customers, your colleagues, and also loved ones too. So this applies in your personal life as well as in your business. It's real important to have these kind of boundaries. And I know uh, if you perhaps maybe you found yourself like I did. I normally work from home, but during the lockdown of the pandemic in 2020, my husband suddenly had to work at home. Now he wasn't allowed to go back into the office, and I had to set some ground rules with him because he, you want to take a break from what you're doing, and then you want to go, he would walk down the hall and knock on my door. And one time he did this while I was in the middle of recording a podcast. I forgot to put a do not disturb sign on my office door. I should have done that. So see, again, it's like, even though I'd been in business for a long time, I still was forgetting that I needed to set boundaries. And that's why they're so important. So how do you do it? Let's just jump right to this. How do you go about setting boundaries? Well, one of the first ways to do it is start by identifying what your core values are. And if you don't know what they are already, you can actually go onto Google and say, how do I identify core values? And there are websites out there that offer free assessments for you so that you can go ahead and figure that out. And then figure out, what are your non-negotiables? These are the things that it's like, no matter what, this time is dedicated to this thing. And so, for instance, for me, a couple of my non-negotiables, and I know I've talked about this on the podcast in the past as well. I think I'll link to it. I'll link to that episode in the show notes. But one of my non-negotiables are, in the morning, I have a morning routine, and it starts with some exercise. I go out. I used to meditate first and then exercise, but I found that if sometimes I didn't want to exercise after I meditated. So now my non-negotiable is, get out there, do your walk first. Then I come back, and my reward for walking is meditating. So those are the two things that are non-negotiable. I also like to do some reading in the morning, but if I don't get to that for whatever reason, if I've got something else going on, then yeah, that one's not, it's a nice to do, but it's not a have to do. And that's what a non-negotiable is. It's like I need to do this, and I have to do this, or the rest of my day is not going to turn out the way I want it to turn out. So that's the first thing, because then that helps you now being able to start setting up those boundaries. And one of the things that can be a little bit tricky, and again, I've had to learn this in my own life, personal life as well as professional life, is communicating those boundaries. And because this is where having some good self-worth and self-esteem will come in handy. And so if you don't have that, this is where you need to do some work. Do some personal work, either if you can do it on your own, spend some time in doing things like meditation or journaling, or maybe it is working with a coach or someone like that to help you. But you need to be able to use assertive and respectful language, because you want to be able to state your needs and preferences clearly and confidently, and explain the reasons why you're setting this boundary. And it's so important for you to be able to say, this is why I'm doing this. I need to do this because it's going to give me more time perhaps to spend with you at a later time. I have to carve out this time for me now so that I can serve all of my other clients, but I have to do this first. Or you want to be able to just explain the reason, the benefits, and then also, listen to the other person's perspective and concerns, because sometimes they may have some valid concerns, and you'll need to then find a way to come to some common ground about that. And uh, I'll talk some more about that in a minute. But first, the other thing to do is then when you're setting up these boundaries is to be now, once you've done it and you've said, okay, let me give you an example. Let's say you're going to work. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're going to say, I'm only going to work between 9 and 5, Monday through Fridays. And that's when I'm going to do it. Or maybe you are dedicating, let's say you're a coach and you're only going to coach clients on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And that way you can leave Tuesday and Thursday for marketing and other administrative tasks, something like that. But then you let your clients know that, yes, you can contact me, or that's it. Let your clients know maybe that you can contact me by text. You can send me an email. I'll respond within 24 hours unless you say it's an emergency, or I'll respond to the next business day, something like that. But establish that, and you need to establish that right at the beginning of the relationship with whoever it is. Set those boundaries up right at the beginning, because that way there's not going to be any, there's not going to be any, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not communication, the opposite of communicating. Miscommunication. There we go. Duh. Hello. Okay. And I got a question here from Laura. I'm going to put this up here because this is good. So she's, we're live streaming on LinkedIn right now, and she says, sorry to ask this, but I find people lazy and sometimes stubborn. What do you do if you ask the 5 to 7 times? What is the appropriate response? I'm about to escalate the tone of my voice as well. When it was nice, they didn't do it. Okay. So now I don't know if this is personal or professional, but let's take it if it's a professional circumstance first. And let's say it's a client, perhaps. And if it is an existing client and they're still not respecting your boundaries, then you might have to take a hard look and say, is it worth my time and effort to have this person as a client? And even though, we hate to lose clients, but you also got to decide, is it worth my being stressed out and all of that? Then you might have to, cut them loose and maybe refer them to someone else and say, I don't think that we're really the right fit for each other. And you can, and you might even explain it and say, I really would love to work with you. I would love to continue this relationship, but you're not respecting my boundaries. And so we're going to have to end this relationship. I'm so sorry. And I think that also applies in personal life too, is that you might have to end that relationship. Now, where it becomes tricky sometimes is if it's family. And I know family, that's a whole other kettle of worms, kettle of fish, whatever, bucket of worms. Yeah, I'm mixing my metaphors today. If it's family, again, you might have to limit perhaps the amount of time you spend with that person. And because ultimately you've got to take care of yourself. We don't have control, unfortunately, we don't have control over what other people do. We can only control what we do and how we react in any given situation. And it's challenging. And I will tell you, Laura and anyone else who is listening or watching this today, and I'm going to have this in the show notes as well, but I did actually, a few weeks back, I had a wonderful interview with Philip Blackett, who is a communication expert. And he gave, the episode was called, let's see, I have it in my notes here, it was called Dissent with Grace, Fostering Healthy Debate. And so I highly encourage you to go check that out, because he really did give some great tips. He also has a book on this subject as well about how to be able to handle, issues that come up, because we don't always get along with people, and we need to when we're trying to set boundaries. So I hope that helps. Laura, and anyone else who's listening. Let's see. So, yeah, so I was talking about being consistent and following through. And so, just also to give you some examples, some other things that how to, sometimes we do have to say no, and you can say no with grace. It's okay because, again, you're doing this as a way to protect yourself. So, let's say someone wants you to do something. You can say, unfortunately, I have too much to do today, but I could help you another time. Maybe check back with me later or something like that. Or I'm flattered by your offer, but no, thank you. I mean, sometimes you just have to politely say no. One of my first clients, they did a whole presentation on no is a complete sentence. Here's another couple ones. It was, that sounds fun. Oh, but I've got a lot going on at home. Or I'm not comfortable doing that task. Is there anything else I can help you with? Now that could be a very useful way to say it. Because if it's true, because sometimes you're not, maybe you don't feel strong enough in that particular area that someone wants some assistance with. And again, that's where, and I've done this as well. I've said, you know what? Yeah, I don't think I'm the best person for you, but I can refer you to someone else who I think really could, just knock this out of the park for you. And I know some of the things that come up though, as we're doing this also is, and again, depending on how you were raised, and I know I was raised in a good environment, but also stressful at times because of my family situation. And so I didn't really learn very well how to communicate effectively. And I became a people pleaser. I wanted to avoid conflict. I wanted to avoid that. And I didn't. So sometimes then on the other side, then you start feeling guilty because you're not able to help someone, or you might, be afraid to not help them because you're afraid of how they're going to react, that maybe they'll get angry with you. And believe me, I'm someone who did not like that because I had people in my life who loved to yell, and that was not a pleasant situation. So this is where, again, I encourage you to, in order to be able to manage things like that, to manage any type of guilt or fear of rejection or fear of conflict that you may have, is that's when you need to spend some time on yourself. And that's because the inner work is so helpful for you to really start to be able to get to know yourself and to connect with your higher self. And that's where, some of the things that I recommend are meditation. I recommend journaling as ways to be able to get in touch with that person, that your higher self inside of you that knows that you're worthy, and you don't have to feel guilty for sticking up for yourself, because that's what you're doing. You're sticking up for yourself. You're setting boundaries, and that's okay, because everybody has them. And one thing I want to point out here, just occurred to me. I didn't even have this in my notes today, but when you do set boundaries, it actually helps people respect you more. Because if you don't have any boundaries, that's when people feel that they can just walk all over you. And that's no good. So you do want to set boundaries, because other people do that for themselves too. So why are you not doing that for yourself? So again, do some of this inner work, or if you need help, reach out to somebody, whether it's, if you're religious, maybe it's your minister or somebody like that to talk to a coach. I'm someone that is, available, but there's certainly other wonderful coaches out there as well. So just know you don't have to go through this alone. You don't have to deal with these emotional barriers on your own. You can learn how to overcome them. It's absolutely within your abilities to do that. And we've kind of talked a little bit about how to handle it when people are, not respecting your boundaries. Is sometimes you do have to just let them go, those relationships. And a couple other things here is to know that sometimes you're going to need to reassess your boundaries from time to time, and maybe you let some go and maybe you revise them, and that's okay too. It just, depends on what's going on in your life at that moment. And I would also encourage you to, if you haven't been setting boundaries, to start with one. Start doing one small one this week. I don't know what that could be for you, but I would encourage you to go out and do that, because setting boundaries is a powerful act of self-love. And we're getting into September is Self-Care Awareness Month, which is one of the reasons why I picked this topic today. So it is a way of setting boundaries. It's a way of taking care of yourself and showing how much you value yourself and really how you value other people as well. Because when you do set boundaries, well, number one, it can help you, even setting boundaries in your day can help you be more productive. By maybe saying that you're not going to take phone calls or you're not going to read emails at a certain time, that's going to help you to be productive. And I lost where I was going to go with that, but that's okay. I had another point to make, but it just went out. That's all right. We've covered a lot today. I hope you found some value in this today. And I do want to ask you, if you did receive some value, one way to do that is to vote for Live, Love, Engage. We have been nominated in the mindset category for a Women in Podcasting award. So I will have the information in the show notes for you to do that. You can also go to womeninpodcasting.net/awards and look for Live, Love, Engage like I said, in the mindset category. We would greatly appreciate that. So yeah, that's one way you can show your support for the show if you got some value out of it today. But one other thing I want to do too before we totally close out today is another strategy that I have found that has helped me in my life. It has helped my clients with being able to release, perhaps some of these limiting behaviors or limiting beliefs, maybe about, like say being a people pleaser, instead of being able to set boundaries, to being able to really appreciate your own self-worth and your own, to love yourself, to really love yourself. And so one of the things that, if you are a regular subscriber to the podcast or you watch us on YouTube, you know that when I do my solo episodes, I love to share something called light language with you, which is a sound healing modality. It is a language that it's a multidimensional language that is really, really what it is love. And it is something that your soul, your heart understands, not necessarily your brain, may not be able to translate it. In fact, I don't translate it. I cannot translate it word for word. I will get some ideas of what the meaning is, but I don't translate it word for word. So what I would do right now is I'm going to set the intention right now that I'm going to share with you a message today that is for your soul's highest good, for whatever it is that you need help with today, with help perhaps in setting boundaries, that's what you're going to hear. So if you are listening to this and you are driving your car, perhaps, or doing something like that where you are multitasking, I would encourage you to pause the podcast and come back to this later, when you can be sitting down somewhere or laying down, even if you want as well, and just to be able to perhaps close your eyes and just relax and allow the message that comes through to again, to just touch your heart. And that's the intention I'm giving for you today, or I'm asking for, is that intention. Kaya na kue ko tu kaya to ya ne. Ako kayo sa no yan no. O ko hue ke an. 𝙗𝙪𝙧𝙗𝙗𝙬𝙬 선녀도 언나기야 소쿠 거기야 후회야 거후회기야 노기소 하도구 거후안나 거후회가 다도 해마도야 또해 소쿠고가요 거후회게야 I hope you received that with the love that was intended for you. And if you would like to experience a little bit longer session with me, of course, you can go to my website and you can purchase a 30-minute session with me. Or if you want to just maybe still test this out a little bit, I do offer a free introductory 15-minute session. And you can get that by going to bit.ly/L, lowercase. So basically it stands for Light Language Trial. So I'll have it in the show notes. Don't worry about it. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, I've got this lovely banner where you can see it. So, all right. So again, I encourage you to go out and set some boundaries for yourself this week, today, and take a look at your life and see where are you saying yes when you really want to say no, and start figuring out how you can start doing more to protect your time, protect your energy, so that you can be more effective as an entrepreneur, as a human being, and to be able to accomplish the things that you want to do, so that you can, as I always in my podcast encourage you to do, is to go out there and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.